Hey everybody, this is Joe748 and I'm here with SD1 and we have another Mailbag podcast for you guys. We're going to be answering all your questions about love, relationships, mother, father, relation. No, we're actually going to be talking about card counting and blackjack, if you could believe that.
I mean, maybe there'll be a love story put in there. I don't know.
Yeah,
it might fit in.
Who knows? So we have all of your questions from places like the Blackjack Apprenticeship YouTube channel, the Blackjack Apprenticeship forum, the Spotify podcast comment section, and we're going to go through them here. All right, first question. Was there ever a time that you guys took it?
Whoa.
Sorry.
Joe, aren't you going to ask me how I am?
Oh, yeah, sorry. How are you?
Living the dream because I'm here with Joe748. Thank you, sir. Jeez.
Oh, sorry about that. I'm just nervous to ask now because if you say that you're not living the dream one time, I'm going to know something seriously wrong.
Well, just don't be a dick and it'll never happen. You'll still be my hero.
Too bad my parents don't listen to this podcast. All right, anyway. Was there ever a time where you took advantage of a situation and circumstance at a casino and used it to play longer in general or be more aggressive during that window of time?
I think the answer to this is going to be yes. You play tables long enough, you're going to run into scenarios where I feel like oftentimes it's, I'm going to get backed up really quick at this place 3 days later. So I think you could really have a sharp answer for this, Joe, just because of just how you've played in your career and what you've ran into, just because the intense car travel everywhere.
Yeah, I think there are certain things I'm looking at while it's in the pit to kind of gauge what everyone's attitude is about what's happening. And there are just certain triggers where I'll, like if the pit boss is just staring at the TV, like totally not paying attention to anything that's going on at the table. He looks annoyed that he has to come over to verify chips or something. And then I'm relaxed, I'm not tense and I could just play however I want to play, feeling fine about it. Also, I love seeing a disorganized pit, not because they're frantic about the big bets, but if they're just running around and you could just tell it's just chaos. Like it's just not run very well. That's another time where I kind of let my guard down and I can relax some, because usually when I see that, I tend to be able to play for a decent amount of time.
Yeah, agreed. And a lot of times they're in really smelly, small places.
Yeah, are there any other like green flags for us that you see in a pit that signifies it's going to be a chill place?
There's been a situation where basically talking to the dealer that I had, he was just kind of bitching and moaning about the environment. And what came out of that essentially is that a bunch of people had recently got pissed off and had quit. And they were short dealers, short pit bosses, short surveillance people. And it was just brutal because he needed the job. And if he wanted to keep it, he was like on his 9th day in a row of working. So, number 1, tired. Number 2, not really happy with their employer. And number 3, they're shorthanded everywhere. That was nice.
I love a disgruntled employee for sure.
Yeah.
It just signifies I just like having more people on my side.
Yeah. There was also a play not too long ago where it was slightly different than counting, but essentially the dealer had kind of not figured it out, but knew certain things were occurring and what we wanted to see happen. So this was not collusion at all. It's hard to explain without getting into, but let's just say that the dealer also realized that, because again, in other AP plays, a lot of times tipping is involved, realized that, holy crap, when these things happen, I keep getting tipped. And I'm pretty sure I know that these things are good, but he wasn't doing anything wrong, if that makes sense, but it helped a lot. So,
what is your version of collusion when it comes to asking for deeper pen? Where is that line for you think, when it becomes, or is it not at all? Maybe it's not even collusion because it's a totally different thing.
I've never, ever asked for a deeper pen. So it's not that I think it's collusion. I've said the things, I think maybe even you're the one that brought this up earlier in my career, but you're like, it just seems like I do really well at the end of the shoe or something like that. That's about as crazy as I've gotten with it. I don't really personally see it as collusion with a deeper cut because you're not, I mean, what are you doing exactly that's changing anything? I think you could make an argument in court that, well, actually, sir, I'm giving the casino more rounds per hour, making the game more valuable to them. So I don't know that I would consider that collusion personally, but I've never asked for it. So I just thought it was high risk, high reward, maybe high risk, medium reward.
Yeah, in my early days, I was pretty brash, and I, became friends with these dealers and at this really small casino. And I wouldn't consider this collusion because there was no money exchanged.
Right, no money's exchanged.
I didn't tip them or anything. I just asked them to cut deeper. And on an 8-deck game, usually they were cutting off like 1.5. And then my friend dealer cut off like, it was about maybe 20 cards off the back of an 8-deck.
Nice.
It was ridiculous. And then, I was getting nervous because she was dealing and she was going to get relieved pretty soon. And we were like we had like another deck and a half left to go. And I was like, there's no way we're going to get to the end of this before the shuffle. And then this older Asian dealer comes in to relieve her and he keeps dealing and dealing and it just keeps going and going and going. And he keeps like peeking behind to figure out where the cut card is. And he was like, where's the cut card? Well, he was just like, where's the cut card? And then called the dealer over to ask like where the cut card was. And it was in there. It was going to get there eventually, but it was very, very awkward. That was a little bit too much for my comfort, but
yeah, definitely would have been ideal if the original dealer could have finished the shoe first.
Yeah. So keep that in mind. If you ask for a deep pen, don't ask for it too deep to the point where you don't finish it before the next person comes over, because the next dealer relief could be a dual rate, and that would be really awkward.
Yeah, and that's not uncommon at smaller, middle-sized casinos. Even with big chain names, it's not that uncommon.
Okay, what are your general thoughts about Reno? Are there any regions of the country that are better than others for advantage play? This one's timely for me because I was talking to someone recently who lives and plays in Washington, and he was describing like how horrible it is right now, but how he got some decent time in Reno. And it's funny because I remember when I was playing a lot in Washington years ago, I was getting a ton of hours in Washington and I was getting like no hours in Reno. And it just seems like that's how it works with this. It just seems like it's very cyclical, and the tolerant places, they change from region to region and from property to property usually.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of moving parts that lead to tolerance or sweatiness, right? It's the table games manager, who the surveillance people are, how seasoned they are, who's in charge of the surveillance people. All those things change constantly. Casinos, unless they're really, really small places, a lot of times employees are constantly changing. And you have to remember that some of these people, like, they're on career paths in the casino industry. So they're always looking to probably get to the dance and be in Vegas, especially if they work for a big chain, to move up and work at preferred properties when you're talking about table games managers. And then when you're talking about surveillance, again, guys, remember, this is a unique job that does not pay a lot. And that unique job entails sitting in a quiet room, a dark room, possibly on weird hours, not talking, and just watching screens, trying to catch people primarily from stealing, being the employees of the casino. And everybody hates them too, by the way. From management perspective, they're considered non-rev gen, so they're not a revenue department. So they think that they're a drain on resources. And number two, they're always watching the employees. Nobody sees them. They go in separate entrances and exits. So the moral of that story is, with very few exceptions, there's a lot of high turnover in a surveillance department. So that changes things too.
You're making me feel really sympathetic for the surveillance department right now. I feel really bad.
I'm not sympathetic. They chose it. The guys that run the surveillance departments, again, they're probably career oriented and they're trying to move up the ladder and get to a big casino. That's what they're trying to do. You take all those factors and there's just so much shuffling, so many reasons that things change, trying to increase or the revenue. Table games manager comes in and goes, why are we cutting off 2 decks on a 6-deck shoe? You know your rounds an hour we're losing? Well, the last guy was scared to death of card counters. Well, this guy's like, that's why we have a surveillance department. Cut off half deck. Get more rounds. Smart guy. The moral of the story is you don't know. We use what we have from the past. 4-1 is excellent for that. But just because it says they're sweaty, and if you're in the area, doesn't mean you don't hit them. Now, if you have a recent bit of intel from colleagues, friends that are playing and something is occurring, take that in and use it. But at the same time, doesn't mean you don't go hit them. You just might hit them in a different order.
Yeah, and I think the most useful intel are things that are policy, procedure stuff. Like if I get intel that they have to call upstairs for anyone betting purple or higher, that's like really helpful. More so than like, oh, that place is really sweaty, they'll back you off fast. It's just too vague. There's too many variables. Back to the Washington thing. I mean, it makes sense that Washington has been a little sweaty lately since that one company, Maverick, bought up all the little places and consolidated them into one company. That is never a good thing. But also, I think along with the employee shuffling around and the turnover and all that, I think it's speaking just from the card counting aspect of it. If you have a place has a reputation of being tolerant, it gets hit like over and over and over again. And then I think what happens after a while is they get hit so hard, they do a reversal, and then they get sweaty, and then people keep failing going there and they're not getting any time again and again and again. And then it has a reputation of being sweaty. And then it kind of reverts back to being tolerant because no one's there anymore. I think it's just like part of the life cycle of the casino.
Yeah, I agree. When you're at the table and counting in your head, can you share what the sequence you repeat or say in your head is while counting? So this gives a scenario. 6-deck shoe, halfway through, finish the first round, running count is plus 12, discard tray has 3 decks, left to deal. What are you saying in your head? 12 minus 4, 12 true count 4, running count 12. What phrasing do you use? What variables to get that to stick in your head?
Usually it's like running 12. Do I want the sriracha burger tonight or the Santa Fe skillet? Running 12, running 12. Do I want the Grand Slam pancake? Running 12. No, it's, I usually don't repeat the true count. I'm always just kind of repeating the beginning of the round. So if it started at 12 and then stuff is happening, I have to make a decision, a deviation decision, then I'll go back to that running 12, add up everything real fast, do the true count, make the decision, and then I'm kind of going on with the updated count from there. So I'm kind of just repeating the running count more than anything. I don't think I even repeat anything else.
Yeah, same. The running count is where it starts. Number one list of priorities is update your running count. So have your running count, and in terms of wherever that running count is, that's when you glance over, not stare, glance over the discard tray, and then you just do your quick math and you make your decision from there. So now there's different tricks. I share this at boot camp a lot of times, depending on if you're auditory or visual in terms of learning. But some highly visual people can like see the number. I always say say it a few times and sear it on the dealer's forehead. And the dealer's above you, so it'll just look like you're looking in them in the eyes. So don't just stare at them all weird and freak them out. But really highly visual people, once they do that, can just see the number on a forehead. And you can have a conversation and come back to the forehead and see the number. So some people can do that. You can use mnemonics if you're more auditory. You just come up with keywords for certain numbers and you run it up to 25. And then you just say D before the word. So an example 7 would be lucky. Your brain's going to remember you said lucky, lucky, lucky 3 times. And I don't think you'll have to say it again, especially if you're highly auditory and you have a conversation with a dealer and it doesn't matter how many numbers get thrown out, you're going to remember lucky. So then you have that, or D lucky. that can help. But I think the process starts for sure with repeating the number over and over and over in your head. And until you get more automated, I wouldn't try those more advanced, I don't know if I call them advanced, but other tricks. And also in the beginning, I'm not against it. Don't be afraid to use your fingers. Joe, you give example of that, like counting down 2 tables to see which one you want to jump in. You're using your fingers, flipping your hands up and down for negative and positive. Like that can be a powerful tool. Just don't be relying on it at the tables constantly, because that can really screw you up.
Yeah, I was just going to say the same thing. I remember even not just early on, but like if there was something really complex going on at the table, I would, lock my fingers under the table. If like I had a host come talk to me, but it was like a 3-way conversation with the host, the pit boss, and the dealer, and we were all talking about something, then I would like, just in case, like just kind of have, if it was a 7 or something, I would just have it on my fingers so I can really talk about whatever topic we're talking about, but also, make all the moves on the table. And so, yeah, it's kind of like a nice backup, but yeah, don't get dependent on it for every single round in between. I'm currently only completely wonging out of the table when the true count reaches -2 and below, but I was wondering if there's a more conspicuous cover for staying at the table, hoping the count swings the other way. I've been thinking about sitting out hands to count my chips when the true count is below -1 to save myself some EV, but that excuse can only be used so often. What are some of your things that you say to wong out while being at the table, while not using the same old, oh, I got to make a phone call thing that we've heard a million times?
I think that if you watch gamblers enough, they don't often give a reason. They just get up. Don't think that you need to explain your actions. Why in the world would you need to explain to them why you're getting up? Why does it matter? Just get up. You're overthinking it when you think you always have to make an excuse. Now, if you want to really bring on some theater where you pull out your phone and go, oh crap, I got to get up from the table, and look at it and just go, put the phone up to your head and say, hey, what's going on? And just look at them and just say, go ahead, it's fine. Go ahead, guys, it's fine. Like you can do that. There's things that you can mix up that way, so you're always not just constantly getting up, but don't think you have to give a reason. You don't. I promise you, if you watch ploppies, maybe never. They're never giving a reason, unless they're bitching about their wife or something like that. Like there's rarely a reason why they're getting up from the table. What do you think, Joe?
I agree. It's just so suspicious. I think maybe just because I've heard the example so many times of the player being like announcing to everyone, I have to go make a phone. Like it's just so obvious to me. But yeah, if I were to do something like that, sometimes I'll get up quickly. Like I got an urgent text. I'll just look at it with a sort of like a panic and then sort of like, be right back. Can you hold my spot? And I just run off and without giving any explanation. I feel like that just looks more natural. If I just got like a sudden text and I quickly leave, like I think that's fine. And also I'll say something maybe like really, really brief and subtle, just like, oh, I can't take this anymore. Like, and then have them wonder what it's about. Like it could be the other players at the table annoying me, or I just want to change I don't say like, oh, let's change up the shoe, but I'll just be frustrated and say, just just be like, ugh. And then they get the idea that I'm trying to change things without having to say it.
Yeah. Now, I have brought on the theater to another level and had entire fake conversations on the phone. I mean, right next to the table, so I could still watch the count to see if it was going to flip about my imaginary kid. And we're out of town, and the babysitter is asking me and hands the phone to my kid, and my kid's like, I really want pizza. And I said, well, I know you want pizza, bud, but it's not really the night for pizza. And we only do that on special occasions, or, just entire conversations I might have had when I was a kid. And that gets the dealer laughing about the situation. And then they might want to talk about what in that circumstance they did. Like they wanted to talk about their own kids and all that stuff. So that worked out really well. So, there's a time and a place, but for the most part, like Joe said, it's like so suspicious that you're explaining why you're leaving a gambling table.
I think next time I'm going to sneak in like a full-on trifold Denny's menu, even if there's no Denny's at the casino, and just whip that out in a negative count and figure out what I want later that night. I don't know why I'm so obsessed with Denny's right now. I haven't had Denny's in a really long time.
I don't have them in my state right now. You have to go to the neighboring state to have them. But we still get the commercials because we're close enough to the other state. That's really frustrating. Okay. At Coffee with Steve asks, recently I heard an interview with Stanford Wong where he said he would just flat bet $100 in a high true count and stop playing once the shoe went to a bad count, making his min bet 0 and his max bet 100. If the place you're playing at is very busy and very difficult to get a seat at the table, is it okay just to sit in one seat and wait for a good count? How might you avoid suspicion?
I mean, the only way I would do this is if it was some kind of like single deck game or something where me starting the shoe at 100, flat betting until it goes, -1, then I can sit out. Otherwise, I'd keep it at 100. That's kind of the only time I guess that is safe enough to really do that. What about you?
Yeah, I think you can do it with shoes with just a little bit of a twist where you just do a 2-step spread. So maybe you fire at 100 and you go up to 400. So you're starting out at a 0, and then you move up to 400. And when it goes negative, get out. What Wong was talking about is essentially wonging into a high true count, flat betting, and he's not moving his bets at all. And he just wongs out when it goes negative. So that is still a big spread. You can do whatever with that. You can wong in at a true 2, depending on if your bankroll can take it, and be betting 2 hands of 500. And as it goes up, you just keep 2 hands of 500, and then you get out if it goes negative. That involves a lot of back counting.
Oh, okay. And his question, he's saying, okay, sorry, I missed this. He's saying if it's very busy and hard to get a seat at the table, can you just sit there taking up the seat waiting for a good count? Probably not. They're probably not going to tolerate that for very long. They'll get very annoyed very quick.
Yeah.
If it's super busy and there's people just everywhere trying to get us, it's not gonna work.
You still want it a little bit busy though for this strategy because you want a lot of tables open. And right now it seems like there's less and less tables open early on. It's kind of something that the casinos are doing. Not all places, but at a lot of them. But yeah, don't just sit there, and don't wong out and just still sit there. That's so obvious. It's just so daggone obvious.
All right. How do you report gambling winnings? Well, we might have answered this in another one, but we'd like to answer again because it is important.
Yeah. You report gambling winnings as earnings, and you pay your taxes on them. That's what you do. If you are a professional gambler, which, by the way, you have to qualify to be a professional gambler, ask a tax expert about this if you qualify. Typically, if you have another job, you do not qualify, number one. But number two, if you do, it is your business, and as such, you can take deductions for things like travel and food, etc. But you are keeping a gambling log, like, by the way, every gambler in the United States of America, according to IRS tax code, whether they are a degenerate or a pro, you're responsible for keeping that. The casino win-loss statement, they don't care about at all. It's on you as the taxpayer to keep accurate records. So we pay taxes on our gambling winnings.
What if the player is they're not a pro, like they definitely have another job? Can they open up an LLC, and even if they're not playing that many hours that year, use that as a way to write off losses versus doing recreational?
It's a state by state. From what I understand from my wife, the CPA, there's state by state conditions, and then there's federal conditions. I do not want to answer this incorrectly, so I'm just going to say talk to a tax professional about that. But I will say that it is my understanding that you cannot deduct things if you are not a professional. So there are certain states that it really hurts you if you're not a pro. Not so much federally, but state-wise, there's really bad states for it. Okay. I'd like to hear a full-time counter break down their hourly EV with travel and scouting time factored in. If the AP leaves the home at 7 p.m. and returns at 3 a.m., visits 4 casinos, plays 5 hours, spends 3 hours driving and scouting, etc., etc. You guys get the drift. Like, are you logging all these hours? So, Joe, what would you say to that?
I would say that I don't have I guess now with like ChatGPT, this would be a lot easier if I went back at all my records to figure out the driving time in between each casino of all my thousands of sessions. I never really tracked it, but just from my guess, this is a total guess, I would say I was probably driving the same amount of time that I have hours, but that is a complete wild guess. I also drove a lot more than I flew, so that also contributes to the time, but I can't accurately say that that's actually what it was. I should go through my records and, yeah, maybe figure out what that exact is.
Yeah, so I look at this a little different than a lot of people. So yes, your driving time, your flight time, hours back counting, that's all considered into your hourly EV, technically speaking. I tended to look at my job as more of a salaried person. I'm going to get X plus hours in, I'm going to generate this much EV, and everything that happens to accomplish that is just part of the job. So when I was in sales, it didn't matter if I had an overnight flight or whatever. I was earning commission if I closed the sale. It didn't matter that I was flying here or there or everywhere. That was just all part of the job. So I always considered it part of the job. And I only factored casino time. So when I stepped foot into a casino, all those hours counted, whether I had a back count for 2 hours or not. Stepping into the casino, stepping out of the casino is what I accounted for.
Yeah, same here for my hourly rate. That's what I did. I also didn't really scout that much. Most of my play was counting, and scouting wasn't really a thing. I was either driving and playing, and I was either going to play, or I spent maybe like 15 minutes looking at the tables and realizing that there wasn't a good enough count game, so I would leave. And that's the extent of my scouting hours. But if you take like a hole carder or something, how many hours do you think they're scouting ratio to playing?
Yeah, it's 3 to 5 to 1.
Yeah.
Every 3 or 5 hours of scouting is 1 hour of play.
Yeah. I also don't know very many people who are non-APs who look at their salary or hourly wage and factor in their commute. When I hear them talk about how much money they make, they never talk about all the work I had to bring home and work on at home for 3 hours they never factor that in. So I feel like with a lot of work, there's all these extraneous hours that are not officially counted for.
Yeah, if you drive to McDonald's to flip burgers, that doesn't go in your hourly. It's walking through the threshold of work and exiting. So, there's different ways to look at it. If you want to get really precise, I'm sure you can. But this job's hard enough. I don't know why you'd want to do that to yourself.
If I'm accounting for all the hours that I drove to get to these casinos, it's like, where am I going to draw the line as far as I have a 4-hour drive to the casino, but halfway through the drive, 2 hours into the drive, there's this amazing place that I've wanted to check out my whole life. Does that 2 hours, is that recreational driving, or is that 2 hours to the casino? So it's kind of a weird blur. There's so many things I did on the road for fun and seeing friends and family spread out all over the country that I wouldn't consider casino hour time getting there, because the payoff was so good to see those people and do those things.
Yeah, just don't major in the minors. That's what I think.
We should have just led with that and moved on.
Okay. Often I hear that if the AP loses the count, it's a failure, and they'll abandon the shoe. The edge is squandered. It's not really a question, but I think they're asking, is that true?
Yeah, if you are counting and then you lose the shoe 2 decks into a 6-deck shoe and you don't know what it is anymore, you essentially played a 6-deck game with 4 decks cut off, and that is essentially negative EV, so I would consider that as being the edge is squandered in those scenarios. But also, if you're dropping the count to that extent, it just means that you haven't trained enough before you started playing with your real money, and you could probably use some more training hours.
Yeah, don't drop the count.
We're gonna answer the rest of these questions in the podcast with just one sentence answer.
Yeah. What bankroll size do we need to seriously be considered for loss rebates? And how exploitable are these in casinos usually?
I think the limiting factor is less bankroll size and more what is the casino's threshold for what they consider a real promotion in that way. I talked to a guy who was trying to get some loss rebates with this particular casino, and the casino told him that I believe the minimum deposit he would have to make to even get the offer was around $500,000. So, I mean, that'll answer your question real quick.
This is a regional thing in the US and also a country thing. It varies. They're just not out there like they used to be. That doesn't mean they're not out there. Recently, at a casino in the US, I was told 3% loss rebate on 10,000, and every 10,000 after is 3% until you hit 50K loss. And at 50K, it bumps to 5% on your initial visit. If you come back, that $50,000 loss bumps to 7%. So that's still healthy. And yes, it still requires a deposit. There's a minimum deposit required into the casino cage. So there's multiple factors, but they don't all work that way. Normally exploiting those places is working a host. So being established, coming in and just going after a loss rebate, that just doesn't happen right away, really, anymore. You kind of have to have a reputation. Even back then, like when Don Johnson did it, he had a reputation. So he was able to negotiate.
Yeah, it's not like they had a sign somewhere in the high limit room that offered, promotion, loss rebate, or anything like that.
Yeah.
How worried should we be about getting backed off in places like Vegas? Are you afraid when you get backed off in Vegas, SD1?
Joe, I've never been backed off in Vegas. Right now, everybody's like laughing like I'm making a joke, but I actually have never been backed off in Vegas, so I don't know.
In the June boot camp, I'm going to take you to a little place called Jerry's Nugget, and we're just going to sit down and have a little fun for about an hour.
Yeah, let's qualify. Let's qualify this joke really quick. So I think it's 130 to 140 hours counting in Vegas, and I had never been backed off. I was also very picky with where I played. That being said, it is still Vegas. And also, there was a lot of luck involved. It just happened that way, guys. So there are certain skills that I use that I think definitely helped. But no, there's not some secret sauce. And no, you cannot avoid getting backed off in Vegas. So let's just say that after that joke. How worried should you be? You shouldn't be. 99.9% of the time, they're the most cut and dry backoffs you'll get around the entire country because it's Vegas. They see card counters every day, and it's just business to them. I mean, do you disagree with that?
That is true. I kind of wanted to rephrase the question and present you with a different one, whereas like if you were just starting out your career, would you start in Vegas as the first place to play, or would you do that later on?
Actually, that's a great way to phrase it. I think maybe the answer to that is yes, because you're going to get more than likely going to get some backoffs right away and get that under your belt and realize they're not that big of a deal. And also, there's just a lot of games. So you can get a lot of experiences really quickly. You can get your multiple backoffs, most likely, experience done really quickly. It's really easy just to bounce around playing unrated. There's a lot of different places that you can go to play. And then you can also get experience in getting flyered and what that looks like. You walk in and they're like, no, you're not welcome here. Okay, you didn't do anything. You're flyered.
So that's the rip the Band-Aid off approach.
Yeah, and Vegas is, back to that question earlier on about sweatiness. Things change, guys. Like, there's one particular casino. I don't know if we want to name like actual names of casinos, but one particular casino that forever was just known to take action. And people got hours upon hours upon hours on this off-strip property. And they were hit for years and years and years. And now, apparently, they're very sweaty. And then conversely, there's a strip property that used to be extremely sweaty that people are just going in and laying down action in their high limit room and getting hours and hours and hours.
Maybe the person that worked at that off-strip property and now works at that on-strip property.
The table manager moved.
It's actually Colin Jones. He hasn't told you guys, but he is actually works in the surveillance department, and he just lets whoever play. It's his side gig.
Sorry, Colin. We didn't mean to ruin that for you. Your side hustle. Richard Bunchkin, over the years, seemed to recommend not cashing out immediately after a session to avoid the requests for an ID at the cage, which seems contrary to how a lot of top BJA pros conduct their play. Can you discuss how to effectively build a chip inventory for higher stakes play and how to break down or cache in an inventory to maximize anonymity?
All right, that's like 4 questions in there. I'll address the first part where I think there's like a, not misconception, but part of the conversation hasn't fully been talked about the whole, going to the cage right away to cash out when you've been backed off. Like the typical, people might have heard mixed messages. For someone like me who is, kind of playing on the road, going from place to place, trying to jam in as many hours as I could, sitting around for, sometimes it would maybe take 3 days to cash out the amount of chips that I had to go totally un-ID'd. That's just time that I didn't want to spend just sitting around waiting, cashing out small amounts. Like I just didn't want to do that for 3 days. So I would, a lot of the times, just go to the cage to cash out. And the reason I wasn't that afraid of that, some people say, well, you don't go to the cage right away to cash out because that's where the best cameras are. I mean, T-Dane's response to that was like, that's his least favorite place to grab a picture because of all the bars that are covering your face through the cage window. I mean, there are some places that have the little camera right next to you, like right on the counter. But if I would just cover it up with a pamphlet, like a when gambling stops being fun pamphlet, I would just cover that up. So then I wasn't really worried about that. And like a lot of the surveillance photos, it's not actually at the cage. It's just when you're sitting at the table and there's a plain open view. But that was my reason for going to the cage more often than not after like getting backed off. So moving on, for the second question, like how do you build a chip inventory?
So playing in a situation like Joe is talking about, like there's no reason for a chip inventory. If you're attacking a place for, let's just give an example. This is a personal example. You have some really high quality intel that this place is pretty tolerant. You know their thresholds in terms of win-loss that they get nervous about. You know what bets start making them look at your play. And maybe you even know that they don't contribute to databases. Okay, so this is a real life situation with me. I knew all of those things. So at that point, I'm going in and I'm going to see how it goes the first time. And I'm going to watch for cues to see if these things are actually coming to fruition and it's real data. I trusted it because I had a friend counter that had been playing there for a long time. And this is what he told me. So sure enough, everything's working out. Of course, they're hounding me for ID. I finally just said, they're not ID because it's heat, because they want to get me rated. Okay, so everything looks fine to me. It looks like it's all checking out. One of the few places I've played rated. Yeah, I'll play rated as long as you can give me credit for the hours I've already played. No problem, sir. Cool. So I get rated. At that point, game's on. I'm going to shear this sheep. I'm not going to maximize them. I'm going to optimize them. Now I'm building chip inventory because I'm going to plan a trip on a monthly basis to come back in for quote unquote business. And so I have a good session, or I have a good weekend, or a good 4 days, whatever, and I win 20K. I'm not cashing out all of that. And now here's the thing. I'm playing rated. So why does it matter if I cash out or not? The reason it mattered to me is because I was hiding my wins as much as I possibly could. So I was rat holing, etc. So I'm building a chip inventory also because if I'm holding on to chip inventory and I had chips assigned to me, I don't necessarily want to let them know that I have all those chips. So that's the rated scenario. So it's just a slow accumulation of chips. If you are playing unrated at a place, this is where chip inventory might even be a a bigger thing to have because you're trying to avoid CTRs and showing your ID and coming in and looking part of the game anyway, as if you've already been playing that day. So it's the same situation where you play and you probably should rat hole, and then you're cashing out below their limits, and then you're keeping some of those chips, and you're just slowly building up. So next time you might come in with 5K in extra chips. It doesn't always work out perfectly because you might get crushed for 10. So then what happened to your chip inventory? Unless you keep playing and maybe you just keep getting beat more. So it's kind of a ebb and flow, give and take thing, but you're just essentially trying to hide and hoard some chips as it goes on. If you're playing at a certain level, there is no amount of chip inventory that's ever going to help you a lot of times, especially if you come in with a lot of chips and they have no idea who you are. Like maybe you had a friend pass off chips to you. I wouldn't recommend, say you get 10,000 in chips from a friend, you buy them. That's another way to deal with chips, guys, buy from other people. But if you have 10,000 in chips, I would use some cash after using some of those chips. I wouldn't come in as a new person and just fire 10K in chips when you're not a known, because that's going to raise a lot of questions. So you just got to think through it. What makes sense too. That's just kind of a finer point to chip inventory.
Yeah, and back to my strategy. If I was playing in Vegas, I never went to the cage right after I played a session. So but Vegas is so different. You're in and out of those places like during those weeks you're there all the time. So it's easy to do that. But
you can also cash out checks at other casinos.
Under a certain amount, yeah.
Under a certain amount. A lot of times they'll take black. So you can cash out like $300 or $400 in black someplace that's different than that casino. I wouldn't go over that.
All right, we'll end on this one. And I am very curious to hear your answer. I would love your opinion on the worst casino in North America. I love this question.
Well, Joe, I think this might warm your heart that I have a new winner in North America, and that would be Hollywood Casino in Columbus, Ohio.
Why do you say that that's the worst casino?
I don't know that it checks all the boxes for being the absolute worst casino. I took a lot of money from them, a lot of money in various different ways, after being told I wasn't welcome back years before, and I've been hitting them for a long time since. I was told I was not welcome there for the second time. And I experienced them being just giant douches, just the biggest assholes in the world. And not maybe as bad as your particular circumstance with them, Joe, but the rent-a-cop, aka the security guard that was all 5'2" and had a massive ego. Yeah, it wasn't pleasant. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to bury these guys. So let's just say the money hasn't stopped from them.
Nice. Yeah. I'm not going to get into which casinos are on my top list because I signed a non-disclosure during the lawsuits for the false arrest. So I can't technically say or agree with you or disagree with you for any of those. Yeah. So aside from those two that I hate, one casino I really don't like is Hard Rock Tampa. Now I know it's not the actual casino, it's just the one guy, I'm sure, that I just hate. But when I got backed off there, the manager, I had over 10,000 in chips, and the manager trespassed me and refused to cash out my chips. And I asked him, like, well, how am I supposed to cash out these chips if you're going to arrest me when I come back? And then he essentially said, like, it's not my problem, like, too bad. And he wasn't budging. And it's tribal, and they can kind of do whatever they wanted to in that scenario. And he chose to really take advantage of that. So that's on my list as up there. Now, I have another one. It's not the worst casino in North America, but it's the weirdest. One of the weirdest ones. It's the Greenbrier in West Virginia. if you've ever been there. This place, if you want to feel like you're in The Shining, go to this casino. Because it is so creepy. Like the wallpaper on all the wall, it's just the eeriness, and it's so quiet, and there's all this crazy wallpaper, and first things first is you have to buy you have to be staying in the hotel to even go to the casino, and the hotel rooms there are like really expensive. So yeah, if you want to spend like $500+ a night on a place that looks like a creepy haunted grandmother's dollhouse in The Shining, then go to this casino. Also, when I went there, they gave me like this, you have to wear a suit to go on the casino floor on top of that. So I didn't have it. They gave me like a rental suit. And then they just immediately backed me off from a flyer from somewhere like really, really quick. So that's another reason why I don't like them.
I was actually just recently talking with another AP about the Greenbrier
Oh, really?
property. He had sent me, he's like, is this real? And it was their dress code. I was like, it's real. They, and the irony behind that, if you guys have never played, it's not just the Greenbrier, guys. Let me just go ahead and lay out West Virginia casino properties to you. They are all absolute shitholes and maybe not even worth your time stopping in them unless you can find some other angle. For pure counting, I don't even know if it's worth your time unless you want to see Deliverance and The Shining. Like, whatever. But yeah, it is hilarious that that place in West Virginia requires you wear a suit on the casino floor.
Now, that being said, if they would have let me play like 15 hours straight, it would have been my favorite place in the country. So I'm not being biased or prejudiced against West Virginia. I just against this casino. But yeah, that's the sweatiness took it over the top for me. But we'd like to hear your opinion on what's the worst casino in North America. If you guys can leave a comment on the Spotify episode or on the Blackjack Apprenticeship forum, we'd love to hear your stories about what you think is the worst casino in North America.
Yeah, stories. Definitely add the stories. Don't just give us the casino.
SD1, do you have any announcements?
I just want to apologize to all the AP brothers and sisters out there that might be 5'2". I realized that I insulted the security guy at the Hollywood casino. And in general, that doesn't make you a bad person. He was just an asshat. So apologies to the 5'2" people out there. My bad.
To learn more about card counting, go to blackjackapprenticeship.com or visit the Blackjack Apprenticeship YouTube channel.